Hi, this is Peter. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Cane Pole Fishing Instruction. I'm going to talk to you now about spinnerbaits. I don't have any inline spinners that I use on a regular basis. Most inline spinners come with a treble hook. They're weighted to get down in the bottom. With the weeds that I have in the lakes that I fish and the stick ups, they tend to get stuck. They tend to get broke off. Inline spinners are very good. They can also be worked the same way we're going to work these spinnerbaits. Now, the two basic types you find in the South are going to be your beetle spin, which is on a safety pin, removable type thing. You can also use the same, it's basically a lead jig head, rubber body, and then the spinnerbait added on. They sell the components, but they also sell this as a beetle spin. You can also use a curly tail grub on this in the same way, or any soft plastic rigged this way. Then you have the more familiar, for those who watch the bass fishing shows, a spinnerbait with Colorado, willow leaf, Indiana, I believe, spinner blade. Some of them have two blades on the shaft. They're very different models. I like the plain basic. This happens to be the little Mini King, Strike King spinnerbaits. I keep them in chartreuse, which is kind of the yellow, greenish yellow, black in this. And I'll explain why I keep each individual color in a moment when I'm using it. But that's the spinnerbait we're going to use today. Okay, we're talking about the spinnerbait. Once again, I showed you the spinnerbait that I will be using. It's just a white Mini King. They have full-size spinnerbaits. I just like this particular one because where I fish, there's usually smaller fish. Now, most people throw it out there, know it's going to sink. They immediately start reeling it in and reel it in pretty quick. That keeps it pretty close to the surface, and you can even kind of break the surface with the blade a little bit, which will work if fish are actively feeding, schooling, and what have you. The mistake of this is a spinnerbait is not designed to be worked fast like that. It can be burned in, but it's not designed to. Now, if you notice, we're sitting here talking, I've cast it out, it's sinking, it's sunk to the bottom. And then I start a slow retrieve. I really want it, if possible, ticking on the bottom, and I just ticked bottom just then. Did it just then. Maybe I need to slow down a little bit. Just barely ticking, or just barely above bottom. You want to slowly bring it in. Yes, this runs the risk of more snags or getting it into weeds, stuff like that. This will snag, but it is fairly snag resistant. Let it sink. Sometimes they'll even hit it right on the sink, and you will feel them hit this, and then just a slow retrieve. That's all there is to it. Now, if you want to get creative, you can twitch it and buzz it in just like you can with a crankbait. I have found, though, that for the most part, that right there, I'm bringing it back in once it sinks. I just tightened up my line a little bit. I'm bringing it back in once it sinks works. Now, when I'm using a beetle spin, sometimes I will bring it in, and I'll stop, let it sink down, and then continue my retrieve a little bit. And sometimes I'll reel it up fast, stop, let it sink, and continue my retrieve. What that does is that brings it up in the water column and then allows it to stop and slowly sink. Spinnerbait, folks, really ain't nothing to it. I was a little close to the weeds. I wanted to get it out the weeds. And then just a slow. And sometimes I'll just creepy crawl retrieve. Now, in case you didn't notice it, I'm really throwing it out there, getting it back in quick, and getting ready to go again. And what you do with a spinnerbait is it's a good search bait, as is a crankbait. You go along and you can retrieve it in. If your boat's moving forward a little faster, you might need to crank a little bit faster. And I had a hit. Missed it. See? Slow crawling a spinnerbait. I'm gonna say it. My next preference to throwing a plastic worm is throwing a spinnerbait. Honest to goodness. I really like working a spinnerbait. For brim, I will work a small beetle spin. For bass, it's usually one of these. I have actually caught brim on one of these this size. I've caught fairly large bass on one of these this size. I've caught crappie on this same spinnerbait. Chain pickerel. It's a good search bait. On a beetle spin, I have caught all of the above and catfish. I have yet to try it for trout, but we're going to go up to the mountains and I'm going to throw it for trout just to see, especially in the little pond that they have. That's all there is to it. Working a spinnerbait. The next lure I'm going to show you is going to be much like this, and it's called a buzz bait. It's designed a little bit differently, but we'll show you that in just a minute. I remembered, I forgot to mention in my spinnerbait video, the reason I have white chartreuse, which you could also substitute fire tiger for that, and black spinnerbaits. Just a simple selection of 3. White I use on a sunny day, especially in clearer water. Personal preference. Chartreuse I use when the water's a little muddy or murky, same conditions, or even, an overcast day I'll use both of them the same way. Black I use in low light or at night. I do some night fishing. The same way I have some black trick worms, I use those at night. I also have some black worms that I use Carolina and Texas rigging. Black is a night color. The only difference that is I've noticed in beetle spins, the small ones especially, if I'm using black, it tends to imitate a little bit more of a little bug, and the brims seem to love them. Farm ponds, there's this one man-made canal, for lack of a better term, river we could call it, that the black beetle spins kills everything you want to catch. I've even caught a small striper on that same black beetle spin. The Edisto River, on the other hand, the white beetle spin, it's just a killer. I have not personally had much luck on green or some of these other colors of beetle spins. Personal experience. The guy who introduced me to beetle spins on the lake years ago when I was a young teenager, he actually preferred green. He would search around for brim beds with the green. Now he'd switch to a different lure whenever he'd switch to live bait whenever he found the bed, but he'd look for him with the green one. I like the black one. Personal choice.